In this video today, I'm going to talk about something that is really personal to me, but I think is really important to share with the world and for certain people to hear. Because I definitely know when I was at the beginning of the situation, I felt like I was alone and there wasn't anyone who was sort of the same way. Because I didn't really see a lot of videos like this out on the internet, and even though I'm not like really internet famous, I still think it's really important for people to hear, and maybe someone who's struggling will come across this video and it'll help them in some way. Or even if you're not dealing with it yourself, then you can just, I don't know, like you can just learn maybe a little bit more about the process and everything that goes into it and all that. So, and a little disclaimer, I know that what I'm going to be talking about in this video is super sensitive. Some people just may not be ready to hear this kind of stuff, and that's totally okay. I'm not trying to force you to listen to what I have to say. You can say and think whatever you want, but this is just something I feel like I need to share. And if you think that maybe I'm talking like a little nonchalant about it, like it's not the easiest, but it's still relatively easy for me to talk about this because I have been going to therapy for almost 5 years. So I've been talking about this and discussing this with people in my family, all this stuff, for a really long time, and I'm in a really good place and I feel comfortable talking about it because I've learned to accept it and embrace it. So some people aren't at this stage yet, and that's fine, but I just thought it was important to show someone who's at this stage to share it. And I am 17 years old, I'm still really young, and I would say I've done pretty good for myself. So if you didn't read by the title, or kind of picked up when I was talking about it, I have severe anxiety and severe depression. I was diagnosed in 7th grade, and I've been dealing with it for a really long time. And in this video, I'm going to talk about, one, my story, kind of like how it started and how I kind of came to the realization, and then I'm going to talk about things that I like, things that I don't like, things that I never want to hear again, and what people can do to help me and then maybe other people in your life. That thing is sort of going to be depending on the person, but just in general, things that I wish like my parents knew and stuff. So when I was in 7th grade, we start all the way at the beginning. During April break of going to 7th grade, I really hated my body. I hated the way I looked. I had like a really tough, like middle school I feel like is tough for everyone, and it was really tough for me. And I really like hated my body, and so I started to starve myself. I didn't eat. I think the only time I ate during a day, my parents were always at work, they own their own business, and so they weren't there, and my sister was out doing stuff, and like she didn't watch what I ate. And so I think I would only have like one meal a day, and I wouldn't have a lot because I'll be like, oh, I ate a lot today, I'm not that hungry, and I would have a really small portion, and it would only be dinner, and that would be the only thing I ate. I just didn't eat because I was like, I need to be skinny, and I felt like that was all I could do. And then that summer, my mom went away for a vacation, and my mom was kind of always my lifeline and stuff, and like she didn't know about anything. And then I started having these situations where I would like black out for 2 hours. I would start getting really overwhelmed and really stressed, and I would like black out, and I wouldn't remember anything, but I was doing something and I just couldn't remember what happened. And my sister saw it, and basically like when I get really overwhelmed and my anxiety starts to kind of like trickle in and stuff, I get really bitchy, I get really mean, and I get really like snippy, and I'm not nice, so like my voice gets really high pitched. And so my parents and my sister didn't know that this was going on, so they thought I was just being a brat, and they would always yell at me, and I would be like, I don't know, like, why I'm acting like this, like, I don't know what's going on, and it was just not an ideal situation. But yeah, so that happened, and then in my 8th grade year, when it started, I had a really close friend of mine, and I told her that these things were going on, and she was like, you need to go to therapy. She was like, you need to tell your mom and your dad, and you need to go to therapy. She was like, because, like, this isn't right. Like, this isn't right. And I was like, no, because my parents are probably some of the strongest people I know, and so is my sister, and I thought that if I admitted that something was out of my control and that this stuff was happening to me, they would see me as weak, and I didn't want to be seen as weak because I've always been a really small kid, and I was like, I hate, like, being, like, I, like, look, like, 3 years younger than I actually am all the time, and I just didn't want them, I don't know, like, I was just really weird. I hate when, like, people comment on how I'm younger and, like, oh, you look so young. Like, I know most people find that as a compliment, but I'm like, but I'm old. And it gets me really annoyed, and I don't know why, but it's just, like, something that gets me going. And so, basically, I think, like, the fall of 8th grade, I had another blackout, and my mom was there for it, and basically, I like blacked out. I don't remember what happened, and next thing I knew I was in my room, and it was 2 hours later, and basically what happened was I started freaking out, and I started like scratching my face, and my mom tried to pull my hands away, and then I like kept on scratching like I was trying to hurt myself. And I was just like crying, and my mom sat me down and she was like, there's something wrong, and I was like, you're right, like there is. And me and my mom didn't think it was anxiety or anything like that. Like, we didn't think it had anything to do with that. So then that summer I went in for therapy. I still remember the day, October 4th. I went into therapy to try to like figure out like a quick cure for these like blackout sessions. Like, my mom was like, oh, there's just hormones. And me and my mom, when we went in, like, my mom was like super against taking medicine. She's like, it's not necessary, it's just like an extra thing, like you don't have to take medicine. And I was the same way. I came in and I was like, whatever this is, like, we can solve it without medicine. I don't want to take medicine, because for me, like, in my head, I thought when you take medicine, like, that means there's something like really wrong with you. And that was when I was younger, and I didn't understand all this stuff that I know now. And I like you take meds now, I'm like, okay, like, whatever, like, it could be for a majority of reasons, and it doesn't make you weird or anything like that, obviously. So we basically went in there, and I met up with this therapist, and we went pretty much every week, and the therapist was like, oh, like, you have to, like, make amends kind of with your family. Like, me and my family, we were really torn, we were really apart, and it wasn't good. So winter came around, and there was just snowstorms and stuff, and I didn't get to see her, and so I didn't see her for like a month, my therapist. And I was like, oh, I can do it, like, I don't need a therapist. I went like however many years without a therapist. Why would I need one like for a month? Like, let's get over ourselves. That month was probably one of the worst months of I think I've ever had. I started cutting myself. I started to attempt to commit suicide. It was really bad. I just felt hopeless. I felt like I couldn't feel anything. I just felt alone and hopeless. And, like, you know, I would go on social media and I would see all these people, like, that would, like, post pictures and, like, cutting themselves or whatever. And I would be like, if it works for them, then it must work for me. Like, I was willing to do anything to figure it out. And then when cutting myself didn't do anything and it wasn't bringing me that release or anything like that, I was like, I need to die. I was like, the only way I can get rid of this is to die. And I know this is, like, super sensitive, but it was just where I was at that point. And I would go to bed, and I would set an alarm for 12, like at midnight, like after my mom's gone to bed, and I know she's in bed and she's asleep. And I'll be like, at 12 tonight, I'm gonna kill myself. And I would set up, like, the rope to hang myself and everything, and then I would be sitting there, like, about to step into it, and I'll be like, why am I doing this? And then I would just, like, I would wimp out of it, basically. And I'm so happy that I did. And I ended up counting it one day, and I ended up trying to commit suicide 30 times in about, like, a month and a half. And so I came back, and, like, the sessions were now, like, half with my mom and half by myself. And so the second half when I was by myself, and I was like, didn't really talk to anyone. Like my family at that point, we weren't really good at communicating. And I was like sitting there and I was like, I need to tell her, like, I like being in control of stuff. And I kind of realized that this was out of my control now. There was nothing I could do to help myself. And I needed someone to help me. That I was so busy like being my own rock and stuff, I couldn't do it anymore. I needed someone to hold me up because I couldn't control what I was doing. I couldn't control what I was feeling. I was out of control and I needed someone to tell me what to do because I didn't know what to do. I tried everything. And so I told her and she was like, does anyone know? And I was like, no. Like, no one knows it. I'm not gonna tell anyone. And so there was that whole entire situation, and then I would say we were doing okay, we were getting better. My mom knew of it, and my mom found out that day because she was like, you have to tell your parents. She's like, you can't do this all by yourself. You're like 14 years old. Like, you can't do this by yourself. 13, 14. She was like, you can't do this by yourself. You have to get help. And it has to be your parents. She's like, because I can't live with you. There's no one who can just stay with you and help you. Your parents are gonna have to know that you're struggling. And I remember my mom came into the room. She took out all the sharp objects out of my room. And she was like taking all the stuff out of my room. And I was like, ugh. And I was like getting really mad at her. And I was like, oh, like this is so extra. You don't have to do this. And then this was probably beginning of January. And then probably about the end of February, I was sitting in my room and I was just crying and I just hated myself, and I went downstairs, I grabbed a kitchen knife and I started cutting myself. And I was crying in my room, like, you could like see the bathroom from my room, and it's like my bathroom and me and my sister shared it, and my sister's 2 years older than me, and so we were like, boom, straight shot. And so she came out of the bathroom, my door was closed, and she heard me crying, and she came in and she saw me cutting myself. And then she started freaking out, and she started crying, and she picked me up, and she brought me into the bathroom. And she like grabbed the knife out of my hand. I was just sitting there, I was just crying. And she started crying and like screaming, and my mom came upstairs, and she was like yelling. She was like, Mom, Mom. And my sister didn't know, my dad didn't know, like no one knew. Because I was like, only Mom. And I was like, Mom, please don't tell anyone. I was like, just please don't. And so my mom came upstairs, and that's how my sister found out. She saw me in like probably one of the worst places I've ever been. And my mom brought me to the bathroom and she wrapped me up, and like my mom was like yelling at me, but not really. Like she was just being like why would you do this? But it was like, you know, she just didn't know what to do and what to say. So then she called my therapist and she was like, we need an appointment like now. And so we made an appointment for the next week, and I went. And my therapist was like, I'd like to talk with her, like, on her own. And so basically she sat me down and she told me, she said, if you do this again, I'm sending you to a mental institute. She was like, I'm sending you to a mental hospital. She told my mom, she was like, if this happens again, call 911. Put her in professional help. And she was like, she told me, she was like, I'm doing this. She was like, because your parents don't know what to do. They're not masters at this. She was like, and when she said that, I was like, oh crap, like, and she basically sat me down, and she was like, when she said that, I was like, shit, like, there is something wrong with me, and not, like, wrong with me, like, in a bad way, but, like, there is actually something going on with me that was out of my control, and I needed help for, and she was like, you need to go to your primary physician. She was like, you need to make an appointment, and you need to be tested. She was like, you need to be tested for mental illnesses. She was like, and they're probably going to put you on medication. And she was like, and you have to take the medication. She basically stressed it to my mom. She stressed it to me. She was like, this needs to happen unless you want me to die. Because if I don't go on the medication, then eventually I'm going to end up killing myself. So I need to do it now if you don't want your kid to die, basically, is what she told my mom. And so my mom was like, okay. I went to primary physician. And she tested me. And she was like, you have severe anxiety and severe depression, and usually she was like, you know, usually they come hand in hand in a lot of cases, like not always, but in a good amount of cases they do kind of come hand in hand. And she was like, just talking about that, and she basically put me on this medication because she she put me on this medication called fluoxetine that I've been on ever since, and basically what it did was, she basically told me that, like, the serotonin, like, responders thingies in my brain were not sending enough serotonin. They were not receiving serotonin, they were not sending serotonin, like, there was not enough, like, of that going on in my brain. And she was like, so you need to take this medicine because this is going to replace what they do. And my mom was really nervous because it happens so commonly. You put a kid on a medication and it ends up going worse. You hear so many situations of that, and they become addicted to it, and you have to, like, they get withdrawal, and my mom's like, I don't want my kid going through that. And so this was, like, the lightest thing you could do, and it ended up and has been working amazing for me. And basically they told me, they're like, oh, this might be a hormonal thing, but then about a year later, when I needed to bump up my medication, they were like, okay, this isn't hormonal, like, this is an actual thing, like, this isn't gonna go away. And then I started going to therapy every week, pretty religiously. I was just getting pretty serious about it, and I realized that I needed to do something, and I needed to do something now. And it turned into something where, like, my therapist had my dad come in, and, like, me and him would talk, and there was just, like, a lot of issues in my family, and it definitely pulled my family apart because my parents didn't know what to do. They had never dealt with anyone in their lives with anxiety or depression. My sister didn't know what to do, so we were really separate for a while, and I felt really alone. And I remember when I was going through it, she was like, it will get better. She was like, I promise you, like, it will get better. And she said it over and over again. She was like, so many other people have this like you. Like, you're not alone. And I felt so alone, and I felt like it would never end because it took so long. And I remember, like, I told no one that I took medication. No one. And I was very secretive about it. And yeah. And I remember, like, I'm pretty sure most of my family doesn't even know about it. Like, I've told pretty much no one. I've barely told anyone the full story of actually what happened because it's so different. And I can truly say it took me until the end of my sophomore year last year to say out in the open that I have anxiety and depression. And it wasn't like I was embarrassed of it or anything. It takes a while to come to terms with. And me, okay, we get it. It took me a while to come to terms with it. Like, I like being in control, and it basically was me admitting that there was something out of my control and something that I couldn't help. And that was just hard for me to do. I'm gonna scoot you closer. So that's pretty much the story. I was pretty good after this. There would be a few times where I'd have a few lapses and stuff, but, you know, I've been pretty good ever since, and I can definitely say that I kind of realized going through it that it is a constant climb. You will never, like, be like, woo, I beat it. Like, you will never be like that. Never. It is a constant climb, a constant struggle, and you'll fall down, and you'll have to just get back up. And I started at the very bottom, like, the lowest of lows, and I'm climbing, and now I can say that, like, I see light. I feel like metaphorically, like, you're climbing to the light. Like, I can feel the light on me. I'm in a really good place. My family's in a really good place. Like, we're all in a really good place, and a place where I feel comfortable talking about this and sharing this because I'm like, I committed myself to learning so much about it and learning about myself, and I cut out certain things from my life that would trigger me, and I've learned so much about myself that I feel pretty confident. There's still times where I'm not confident, and I'm like, oh, like, you know, I wish I was this, I wish I was that. Like, obviously, I'm still human. I still am not always 100% confident in everything, but I've learned to accept it, and when I feel that way, to deal with it. Oh, shit. To deal with it and come to terms with it. And that kind of goes on into the next thing of things that I like about having anxiety and depression, and it isn't a lot of stuff, but I can definitely say that one of the things that I wouldn't say like, but is a plus, is I've become so much stronger as a person. Not physically, but like mentally. I committed myself to getting better. Like I would go to bed like not only like physically exhausted, but mentally exhausted. I worked myself so hard. I was like, I need to find a way to figure this out. I need to become better. And I realized that I needed to come to terms with that, and I don't even know what the hell I was talking about. Oh, I'm so much stronger as a person. I've learned about things that trigger me, things that don't trigger me, not in the meme way, like actually. And I've learned about things that I like and that I don't like, and how to say no to people and not feel guilty because I'm saying no and being like, oh, like I'm a party pooper. Like now if I say no to doing something, I don't feel like a party pooper. I'm like, if I do it, it'll be an unhealthy situation for me, and I'm not about to do that. So whatever, like say whatever you want to say about me. I know what's best for me in most situations, and that's all I have to say about that. And so I think that's a positive. I've learned so much about myself. I've become so much stronger. I'm so much in tune with myself, more in tune. You know, there's still, like I said, there's still days where I'm like, oh, like, I'm so fat. Or I'm like, oh, I look disgusting. Or I like look at a picture of mom, I'm like, oh, I want to be like her. Like, I'm still like that. But I've learned to be like, oh, like, I really want to be like her. But it's okay if I'm not, because I'm just going to be myself. And it took me years to do that. Years. Like, it took me the past 4 years to do that. 4 or 5 years to do that. It didn't take 3 days. It didn't take 30 minutes. It didn't take a year, a month, a few months, like half a year. It takes a while. And this process is a long-ass process. And you can't try to rush it in a person. For things that I don't really like about having anxiety and depression is having it. There's lots of times where I feel like an outcast. I do still feel like a party pooper because there's things I can't do. A thing I don't like is the bad days. They're horrendous. When you have a bad day, like you don't always just have like good days every day. There is still bad days. And when I have a bad day, it's just, I don't know, like I just feel really alone, and ow. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Anyways, when you have a bad day, you feel like you've taken 20 steps back, like big steps back, and you just feel like, ugh. And it'll happen in one day, and you're like, how can this happen? And you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to do that all over again. And then when you start, you're gonna have a bunch of bad days. Like almost every day is gonna be a bad day. And then like, just take the time and really commit yourself to getting to know yourself and learning about yourself and learning flaws, stuff and that, and like learning to love yourself. And which is a long ass process. I didn't just wake up one day and I was like, I love myself. And then I did love myself. No. You know, I have to learn to accept my flaws. I have this quote in my room that says, debate the negative and accentuate the positive. It's right there. And it's probably my favorite quotes of all time, other than maybe cultivate kindness. Because it, instead of like, it goes along with what I believe in, that, you know, if there's something bad, if there's a negative, don't just like push it under the rug and just be like, oh, like, I'm not gonna deal with that. Like, don't just push it under the rug. Like, accept it and be like, you know what, like, and debate it. Be like, the first step to debating anything is accepting that it is something and then debating it. And so accept the fact that there is this negative and debate it, being like, why is it a negative? Like, and just discuss it and, you know, accept that it's there and acknowledge that it's there, but don't focus on it. And then you just focus on the positive of the good things in your life. And in the beginning, it may feel like the negative is huge and the positive is small, but eventually the positive will start to grow and grow, because one of the negatives you'll be like, yeah, like I don't know, let's, like, maybe one of the negatives in your life is you're like, I don't have really long legs, like Kendall Jenner and Gigi Hadid and all these supermodels. I don't have really long toned legs like them. But then a positive from that is you're not a supermodel. Which sounds like it won't be a positive, but it is, because there's nothing wrong with being a supermodel and a model. Nothing. If you're that, all the power to you. Like, there's nothing wrong with being that. But as a teenage girl, like, you could be like, you know, I'm not this super skinny person. Like, I'm natural. I don't have these super teeny little legs or super toned legs, which there's still nothing wrong with. Some people just have those, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I don't have that. I have thick, short legs, little stubs. And that's a good thing, because you can embrace it. And you can be like, oh, like, I'm short, and people like short people. I don't know. But there's almost in all the negatives, you can find a way to accept the negative, and when you finally learn to accept that negative, a positive will come out of it, and that list will grow, and this list will shrink, and then there'll be things where there's more positives coming to your life, because as you learn to accept certain things, you're like, I love my toes. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe you're like, I love my toenails. It's really weird, but they're really nice toenails. They always look really nice, and they look really cool, and they're not gross and yucky like certain toenails, like other people's, like people like other toenails. But it's a weird thing to like, but I'm like, yo, I like doing my toenails because they look good when I do my toenails. Sounds weird, but it's a thing that I learned to accept, and I was like, I like them, so we're gonna rock it. And whenever I get my toes done, I'm like, I'm gonna be wearing shoes that show off my toenails for the next, like, 3 centuries. Or until it looks bad, and then I'm going to do them again so it looks good. 3 centuries is an exaggeration. But you know what I mean. So there's that. And I feel like there's so many negatives you can go down into of, like, what's not good about having it and stuff. But I don't want to focus on all the bad things of it, because it is really bad, but I don't know. I just don't want to talk about the negatives. I want this to be a nice positive video, and I just want people to know that there is negatives to it. There's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. If you're a person that has anxiety or depression and you're watching this, I'm not being like, yeah, there's like no negatives, and like snap your fingers, you turn them into positives. No, it takes a while. It takes such a long time. But the negatives are there, and it's a long list, and as soon as I mention one, I'll start to mention another, and then I'll spend like 30 minutes just talking about the negatives, which, yes, they do all exist, but I don't want to make a video that just focuses on the negatives. I want to make a video that also discusses the positives and the great things. Not the great things, but like that it is beatable and like not beatable. I'm like trying to find the right words and I can't. But it is doable to become better and to come to terms with yourself. It's going to take a while. It's not going to be easy, like I've probably said like 20 times in this video. It's going to take a while. It's not going to be easy. But I promise you, if you commit yourself to it, if you really focus on it, it will happen, and you will look back and you'll be like, oh my gosh. And you'll look back and you'll be like, holy crap, like I actually did that. I actually came over a huge hump in this process. And I did it, and you're going to be so proud of yourself, and you're going to be like, I am so strong, I am so resilient, I am so brave, and you're going to be like, go me, and you're going to be like, boom, self-confidence through the roof, and everyone else is going to be like, wow, she's so happy, so in love with herself, and you're like, because I'm kicking ass over here, I'm kicking the ass of anxiety and depression, and I'm doing it, and you don't even have to know. Like, you can tell, if you're the type of person where you want to share it with everyone, then fine, do it. I was just not that type of person. It was something really personal to me, and I didn't want people to know. That's fine. Like, you don't have to share it with people. It's up to you. But if you don't, then you can kind of walk around being like, I'm over here kicking ass. And maybe they are too. But you can just look back and be like, I'm so strong. I'm so brave. And, like, I'm doing all of this, and I'm kicking ass, like, while in school. Or maybe you're not in school. Like, age varies. But you're like, I'm doing this all while still living my life. And not a lot of people can say that. and boom, there's a positive. Like, you're kicking ass. Just threw you a positive. So things I never want to hear again. 2 things that I get very heated about, and you'll hear that. One thing that I hate is the overuse and the misuse of the word anxiety and anxiety attack. So many people have a paper due and they're like, I'm going to have an anxiety attack. You're probably not. Oh my gosh, I have bug bites everywhere on me. Shit. Sorry. You're probably not. I can probably say there's like a 95% chance that you won't. Because having an anxiety attack is so different than from being stressed. I totally believe that you're really stressed about that paper. Like, you probably are. You probably are wicked stressed. Okay, cool. Like, you know, like, but probably as soon as you're done with that paper, you're not going to be stressed anymore about the paper. That's not anxiety. Anxiety is an obsessive stress. Even if you have anxiety and you have a paper due, after the paper's handed in, you're still going to be stressing out over the paper. And you're not going to be able to stop stressing about over the paper. Like I said, anxiety is an obsessive stress. An obsessive nervousness. It is being stressed, being nervous to an obsessive level. It's taking it from 0 to 100. So when you say you're having anxiety, like if we just talk in my case, if you're like, I'm going to have an anxiety attack, I'm like, oh, so you're going to black out because from stress over having this paper. You're probably not. And if you are, then like, I'm not saying anything against that. Maybe that has happened to you, and maybe like you do have anxiety and you will happen. Like, I'm not saying anything against that. But I'm saying most of the people who say that, you probably won't. Probably won't. So stop misusing it. And sometimes I misuse it, and sometimes, because it's so normal to use it, it's normalized to be like, oh, I'm having anxiety over this. Like, some people, you need to realize and look up what anxiety actually means and its meaning. And if you do know and you're using it correctly, then I'm going to be like, okay, cool, like, whatever. But you need to understand what you are saying and what you are meaning when you say this. And you are saying some crazy stuff when you say that. And you need to realize that. And you are taking something that probably is at like a 10% and you're bringing it up to like 100%. And you're like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. Well, guess what? You said it, now you mean it that way. And it annoys people like me because people say it and I'm like, there's 95% chance you're not. And it annoys me because in one sentence, even though it is becoming normalized and like people are being more open about it and stuff, it's cool to be open and accept it, but you also need to use it correctly. It's like when you misuse a word and like your English teacher docks you a point, they're like, you can't use a word there, like on your essay, like it doesn't have the same meaning. It's like this. It's like great that you can use like a big ass word, like not in this sense, like it's great that you can use this nice word, but it has nothing, it does not fit in the situation you are placing it into. So why are you using it? You're using it to exaggerate your story, and anxiety isn't something to use as an adjective to exaggerate something. It is something serious that we cannot misuse. Now, if you're a person that says this and you actually are having anxiety over it, then like, okay, like I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the people who aren't having anxiety over it and they are misusing it. That's what gets me angry and gets me rattled and what gets me going, and I just sit there and I'm just like, it gets me going. As you just saw, I got very rattled about that. The next thing that gets me so rattled, and I can truly say this thing I only really see teenage boys do, like high school and below, is pretending to cut yourself. That gets me going. They'll be like, dude, I got a bad grade on this test. And they'll pretend to cut themselves. They'll like take a scissor and they'll just be like, and they won't actually do it, and they'll be like, dude, for sure. No. And as another person wonderfully said it, and I'm not going to say who it was, but they said, they're like, I cut myself because I wanted to feel something. I felt like I couldn't feel anything, and I did it so I could feel something. I never cut, my personal situation, I never cut myself because I got a bad grade. I cut myself because I had no last resorts. And I was like, and if this doesn't work, then killing myself would. It was my last resort before committing. It is not something that I did because I got a bad grade on a test. It was because I hated myself. Because I was truly angry and hated myself. And this isn't something that should be joked about. And once again, I'm getting very heated about it because I don't understand how this is a joke to people. How? Like, how you can do this and laugh about it. Like, how? Like, I can't think of words to explain how idiotic and how like, why it's just an idiotic thing to do. And think so many people, like, I have triggers that trigger my anxiety or trigger my depression. And it happens, like, those triggers happen in real life and stuff. But you are not just bringing up, like, just like your little trigger for someone. You're going straight to the straight to the worst case scenario. Like, you can trigger anyone by going straight to the source. And you're doing it in school and you're laughing about it. I don't get this. And, like, I see people do it so much and I just want to drop kick them. I just want to drop kick them. And I don't, because I'm like, they don't know the situation. Like, they probably don't even know what they're doing is how bad it is, because they just don't know. And I wish that people did. I wish that someone took a second to teach their kids, or, you know, maybe not, because it's not always the most common thing. I was the first person in my family to have this. They didn't know what to do with it. But to take a second and educate yourself on the situation. It is becoming more and more common. Lots of people in this world have it. There's probably statistics of showing how common it is. But yet you are making jokes about it. Don't. It's like when people say, oh, I'm going to kill myself. You have, like, a really big project and you're like, oh, I'm going to kill myself. Like, what the hell? Like, I even say it sometimes because it's normalized and I do it, and I always get angry at myself when I do it, and after I'm like, why the hell did you say that? But it's like, so you're telling me you hate yourself so much, and you hate yourself this much over a paper, that you are now going to take your own life and take yourself off of this planet, and then someone giggles after it. Like, that just gets me going. That just gets me going. That just really grinds my gears, and you can tell because I'm getting really riled up about it. But I feel like cutting yourself and making jokes about committing suicide, I said suicide really weird. Suicide is a blatantly obvious thing that you don't touch upon in normal day-to-day life, let alone as a joke, but yet people still do it. So I feel like I shouldn't even have to be talking about this. I shouldn't have to be saying that, like, this is an issue, because people should know this. They should. And if you don't, then educate yourself, because you are fucking up big time. You're making a big ass issue, and it's pissing me off, and it's pissing off people who have this situation. Because there may be someone in that room who hasn't come to terms with it, and that triggers them. Like, congratulations, you just triggered someone to go home and cut themselves, or maybe try to commit suicide. Like, I hope you feel great. I hope that joke was really worth it. And once again, that is worst case scenario. Worst case. Worst case. Will that ever happen? Maybe not. But just know that it could happen, and that you may be the reason that it could happen, and you're not going to make that joke ever again. I know you won't, if you think about that next time you're going to make that joke. And then finally, the last thing is how you can help. And the most generic thing I can think of to help someone, and was something that my parents learned the hard way, is to try not to understand, but be understanding. And there's a huge difference. They're both the same word, but they have a huge difference between them. My parents, when they found out about it, they read articles and articles and articles about anxiety and depression. They tried so hard to understand exactly what I was going through. So they knew exactly how to deal with it, so they knew exactly what to do. And that isn't going to happen. If you have a friend that's going through it, if you have a family member that's going through it, you will never understand truly what they are going through, no matter how much we tell you, because most of what's going on with us are feelings and emotions, and we can't always explain how intense those feelings are and how intense those emotions are to lead us to do certain things that we do and cause us this stress and cause us this anxiety. And you'll never be able to truly understand it unless you go through it yourself. And I wouldn't, and I think most people who have gone through it would not wish at least I wouldn't wish what I've gone through upon anyone in the world, because it is really difficult. And even though at the end you can feel really proud of yourself, it's going to be a constant struggle my whole entire life. And I don't wish that upon anyone. It's really hard, and you tear yourself down to the very bottom, and you have basically to build yourself back up. And doing that as a teenager, going through middle school and all this stuff is not easy to do. But I did it. But I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy to go through this. And I wouldn't. And that's something that happens. You can never truly understand what a person is going through unless you go through it yourself. And that's not just with anxiety and depression, but with so many other things in life. But you can be understanding if they say, listen, like, this is just a trigger for me. And in your mind, you have no idea why this could trigger someone. But just be like, okay, we won't do it. Like, don't give them shit because you really wanted to do it. Like, I already feel bad enough that I'm making you, that I can't do this, and you probably now can't do this either because it's just me and you, and I'm doing this. I already feel bad enough. Don't make me feel worse. Like, just be understanding, and if someone says, listen, I'm having a bad day, then just be like, hey, like, do you need a hug? And if they're like, no, I just want to be alone, then be like, okay, like, text me if you need anything. Just know that I'm here for you, and I love you, and, like, no matter what, I support you. Just do that. Like, just do that. Like, just be understanding. And it's hard to explain the difference, but to understand is just trying to just understand what's going on. Like, you understand a math topic, you know, or a math problem. This isn't a math problem. You know, you can't really understand it, but you can be understanding of this. Be understanding when they're having a bad day, when they're being rude. When I tell you, like, hey, listen, we're going into a city. For me, a thing that always triggers me is overstimulation. Flashing lights, loud noises, large crowds of people, especially. And when you put them all together, it is, like, a really bad situation for me. But, so, like, when we go into a city, I always tell people, I'm like, listen, like, this is the situation I'm in. It may come to a point where I have to leave, and you guys may have to leave with me because I can't go alone by myself in a city. And the best thing you can do in that situation is be like, okay, that's fine. Don't bring up, like, but I really want to do it because I already feel bad enough, you know? Just be understanding of a person. You would do it with other people, the same thing applies now. And that's pretty much it. I hope this was helpful. If you're a person with anxiety or depression, with just one of them, you know someone who has it, or you're totally, you know nothing about it, I just hope that this helped you learn a little more about it. You got to know me a little better, but learn a little more about it and things and just the way that it is. And maybe it helped you have a better understanding of certain situations. And that's all I ask for. I don't ask that you leave here being an expert on it, or you leave here knowing everything, but you at least now understand a little bit more. And maybe there's certain things that you did before and you mentioned about doing before, like the things that I said I never want to hear or see again. And now you know that you'll never do them again, or you'll be more aware of when you do it, and hopefully you'll rat out other people when they do it, because it's a horrendous thing to do. And if you're a person watching this with a mental illness, anxiety, depression, whatever the hell it may be, if you're a person with a mental illness and you're watching this, I promise you it will get better. And I know everyone tells you that, and you're sitting there and you're like, but it hasn't. But I promise you it will. I went through this when I was in middle school. I'm still going through this, but I did it as a teenager, going into high school, growing up, doing all this stuff. If I did it, I promise you can do this. I promise you. It may suck now. It may be so hard. You may feel like you're all alone because your family's trying to understand it, or maybe your family doesn't even know about it. But it is okay, and it will get better. But you need to commit yourself to doing everything you can to make it better. You can't be like, oh, it'll get better, and then do nothing. You have to do something. But I promise you it will, that you are not alone, that I'm a teenager who has gone through this, and I have, you know, gone over the biggest humps, climbed the mountain. I'm still climbing it, but I'm getting better. And it can be done, no matter your age. Whether you're a 40-year-old going through, no matter what your age, you can do it. But you need to commit yourself to doing it. You need to, my best recommendation is to go into therapy. I was so embarrassed to say I was going to therapy, but therapy is the best thing you can possibly do because these people are trained in helping you. And I promise, even if you go once a week or once every 2 weeks, just talking with someone and being like, listen, like, this is just what's going on in my life and just kind of really stressed me out. And they'll be like, okay, like, here's what you can do to help you out. It will help you. And it will get better. I promise. And if you feel like you're all alone, you're not, because I'm here for you. Whether you're on the other end of the world or you're right next door, I'm here for you. If you know me and you ever need help, get my number from someone, text me, DM me, I don't care. I love you all. You are all of you going through this are amazing people. You're strong, you are beautiful, you're awesome, and you will do it. I promise, and I'm sending you all the love in the world and all the support and all the motivation and everything I can possibly send you from me to you because you're amazing and you deserve it.